Bam! Welcome, everybody, to Negotiating This. Actually, it's Negotiate This with Nick Segal, episode 4. Awareness to action. That's what we're going to discuss today. I've got a special guest that I'll introduce in a moment. The intentions for the day. We are going to explore what we're learning at this time. There is such an opportunity to galvanize this new reality and process it through the learning that we have realized and take that with us into our reality when we go back. I'm calling it online. So we're going to help you recognize what is your key learning from this time. We'll explore mine, and we'll look at Andy Butler's, our special guest that I'll introduce in a moment. And then we're going to look at why it's important to you, because unless you define and truly get in touch with why you're doing something, you will have a tendency not to continue on with it. When the going gets tough, we kind of deviate unless we're connected to our why in that matter. And then we're going to look at daily implementations. How can we create a daily practice that keeps us engaged and connected to that? And towards the end of the time, we're going to open it up to Q&A. I've figured out how to work the live chat so everyone can see it, and then we can respond to you. So as questions come up, if you have a question, just put it in all caps so that we can recognize that. And you're welcome to chat along as we go. So that is today's intention and objective. It is my absolute joy and pleasure to introduce Andy Butler. Andy and I have known each other for coming on 2 years now. And what first sparked me about Andy was his sense of being present in the moment. He was funny. He was irreverent. He still is, but also smart in a way that he looked at things in a way that I don't look at things. And whenever I meet someone like that, I go, that is a dude I want to get to know more. And then what really has blossomed the relationship, and we're working on a number of projects together, is his heart. And I got his caring above all else. And it wasn't about the money, and it wasn't about the end game as much as it was about the experience and the ride and the journey and the sharing of that together. So without further ado, I want to introduce everybody to Andy Butler. And Andy, what's your intention for this day?
My intention for today, first and foremost, appreciate you having me here. I think that, what you've been doing here has been something that's very admirable. I love when people just like take the plunge, and I think that this has been a moment of everyone having to just take the plunge, learn new skills, try new things out. So first and foremost, I appreciate you having me on here. And my intention for today is I'd just like to approach the conversation with some sincerity, some authenticity, and have a fun conversation with you.
Great.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a distillation of the key awareness, that the learning that we want to take with you. And I'm going to dive right into mine. For me, it's to be present, to genuinely be in the moment. Andy and I were talking beforehand about this idea of the wheel, and that repetitive wheel that I will be on, where I'm so consumed in what I'm doing and my objectives and my goals. And those of you that know me, I'm a very driven guy, and it can be so consuming, and the energy that I take to keep moving beyond what is present in front of me, and I end up exhausted. I end up not feeling any real accomplishment. And I realize that the clinical analysis, the ability to have critical thinking, gets mired by my ego and my desire to win, and that insatiable desire to move forward. And so during this time, when I have the time, the first thing that really was the lightning bolt to my head was that I have this little daughter, and she's just in real time all the time. I've lost touch with someone who can be blissfully happy in one moment and then miserably in need of something the next. And that ability to shift and just stay present in real time. And it's all authentic to her. And as soon as she gets what it is that she wants, immediately, the bliss comes back. And so from my perspective, and what I'm hoping that I invite you all to do this as you're listening in, to consider one, what is your learning? And as Andy and I work through our process, ideally it'll help you identify what yours is and how you're working your process to get to that key learning. Not just, I want to do more of this, I want to do more of this, but this is the key one. So for me, that idea of being present gives me the ability to stay engaged with what is in real time. And what I'm finding is the real benefit of that is those thoughts of anxiety or what if or how's that going to work out, all that future focus just washes away, because my intention and my action and my mental thought process is, well, what's in front of me? And then when I get into that place, relaxation comes forward and gratitude comes forward and a real sense of peace comes forward, that I then can proceed and then engage with whatever I'm engaging in, but I see the nuances more. And so that's really my why I want to be more present, because I'm tired of the anxiety. I'm tired of the distraction. I'm tired of the impatience that I go through. I mean, I don't know how many of us in real time are feeling a level of impatience with I want to get back out there. And we got a huge discussion about that, right? About how quickly do we open up our country, and state by state, and the economy plays into it, and health plays into it. But it's all about impatience and concern and worry. But for me, the more I stay in that place of being present and more available to be in the gratitude of what's present. And the other real byproduct is I have a much greater sense of safety in how I look at my life, because when I'm present, I don't need to worry about what's going to happen in the future. It's what's present in the moment. So those are the dynamics of what connects me to staying present and being present. And that's the commitment I'm making myself to move forward beyond this time and stay truly engaged with that. So Andy, what about you? What are you looking at? What's present for you?
Yeah, I think that being present is, and just to comment on that for a second, it's so interesting how we go through these long moments of life. It seems like where that falls that falls between the cracks too often. It's like, the wheel that you talk about, you move so fast, it's always on to the next. It's always on to the next. How many things can I think about and juggle at the same time? And it seems like for me, when I fall out of that, I start losing value for myself. Like the wins stop feeling like wins. The ability to reflect and make better decisions goes down, because now I'm caught in this cycle of next, and you keep moving forward so quickly that you don't get the kind of calm satisfaction of your successes, because you've already moved on. So I love that. But for me, I think one of the big takeaways right now is just deliberate sincerity. It's a thing that we've talked about in a lot of other times and places, but being very deliberately sincere with my family, with my friends, with my business partners, and my personal relationships, because it seems like to me, I have really come to this place of, in this time, valuing those relationships so much and becoming much more present, as you were saying, with that value. And for me, I really have been focusing on using this time to distill. These are relationships that if I'm not focused on them being sincere, or I'm not really trying to bring the best of who I am to the table, and I'm not seeing it come back, that's a really good indicator for me. That's not what I'm looking for. And I think that so often we get trapped in these cycles, especially in business and in life, where we find ourselves, I find myself engaged with people that there's nothing wrong with the individual or the group, but it's not a self-honoring choice. I'm not doing the best by me and my goals by being part of this conversation. So I'm really trying to stay focused and hold on to this feeling that I have now of deliberate sincerity. I talk to my family, and much more frequently now, and more, in the last few days, I've reached out to him. You and I speak on a daily basis, and the level of sincerity being brought to the conversation right now, I find fascinating. Everyone is so much more engaged right now. And I think that we've all gotten to this place where we've seen how fragile this ecosystem really is. And that has brought I think a lot of people, it's brought the best out of them. And if they bring the best to the conversation and the best of themselves to, how are you today? And they really want to know, you get a lot less of the, how are you? And they say the next thing right away, and I'm really trying to participate in that as much as possible, and also use that as a filter of what I'm doing and who I'm participating with.
Mm. Well, in so many respects, the stakes have been amplified.
Right.
The idea of our mortality, right? And we don't consider it if it's not present, because we're healthy. And if we get a little sick,
Right.
Suddenly we're like, oh, then now I appreciate my health because I'm a little sick. So that's
Right.
the leading edge of that, right? So when someone around us dies, either unexpectedly over a terminal illness, and it takes an extended period of time, and I witnessed that firsthand, we start to reflect back and go, wow, that's really poignant. But the X factor of what we're dealing with now, and you and I have touched on this, is no one knows who is really promoting this disease, who has the antibodies, who doesn't have the antibodies. And so everyone looks at each other, and we're reminded constantly, because everyone's got a mask on right now, right? So I can't avoid that. But what I'm realizing is, to your point of the sincerity of our communications, everyone realizes that this could happen to any of us now, and we could be in the pink of health. And so priorities start to change. The whole idea of, what do I really need in my life?
You go back to value, right?
Yeah.
What do I value, and why? You and I have spoken so much about this. Why do I value this?
Mm-hmm.
And then you pass it through this new filter of, is this really that critical? And is
Mm-hmm.
this not? And I look at the things that create stress in my life versus the things that don't. And a lot of them you don't have to get rid of in your life, but you look through this new lens of, is this that thing that's so important that it needs to affect me like this? Because is that the value, right? And it's like you said, it's so, the perspective has shifted so quickly.
Yeah, and what I'm really starting to come into terms with as my practical application of being present is asking myself the question in real time when I'm feeling disconnected to my peace, my heart, is my ego engaged here? Am I either caring what someone else thinks about it, or is my value proposition defined by whether this happens or not? And why aren't they calling me back? And what did I do? Did I do something wrong? Could I have done more about that? When I get into the place of, Nick, ask myself a very simple question. Did I do everything I could in the moment? Yeah, I did. Was my communication loving? Then now allow everyone else their process. And so I find so much more the priorities of my life are staying truly connected with those heart expressions. And the only way I can do it is be present in the moment to say, am I on course or off course? So, and that becomes one of the metrics. And the offering to everybody listening in is, as you define your key learning, the thing you really want to embrace as you go forward, what are those little triggers, those little kindlings that the awarenesses that you can stay engaged with, to go, oh, I'm drifting off. We were talking before we went live about, exhaustion. Where do we draw the line from our work life to our personal life when we're all in one environment, right? And I want you to share more about your perspective on that, Andy. But to put a button on it, none of us go from exhilaration to burnout. It's a slow bleed, but because we're not aware, it just kind of creeps up on us until it hits us over the head with a 2x4. So.
Well, I think back to the title that you gave our conversation today, awareness and action. It's like, how aware are you when awareness is being present, right? So how aware are you of that leak, right? That leak of energy where what you're putting back in doesn't equal the output that's coming out. You know, there's an imbalance happening. And for me, energy has always been a quality of fulfillment and excitement, right? You know, my tank gets more full as I do things and engage in things that I'm more interested in and more curious about, and with people that are more interesting. So for me, it's always been a fascinating balance of not just how much I'm doing, but also, is it the right things? And I have this really great internal indicator, and I would be interested to hear if this is a thing that's shared, but my burnout comes when it's the wrong things. When I'm doing the wrong things, and you know, to make that more specific, you know, it's just being out of balance with yourself, being involved in projects that aren't serving, you know, your higher self and your greater goals and your greater intentions. And it's like, I get burnt out when I'm involved in things that I just don't care about.
Right. So how do you know when you're on course or off course on that? What's your mechanism for that?
I think it starts with, you know, one of the things that, you know, our call this morning with our group, our team, for our build out is, you know, everyone involved is there for this kind of group reason, right? No one here is really like, you know, looking to sell as fast as we can or trying to make the fast buck. We're all here because we're fascinated by this intellectual question. And I think my filter that I use is, when I look around the room, am I in a room of my peers, intellectually and emotionally? Are we all invested at the same degree? And are we all bringing things to the table with our best intentions, you know? And I think that my filter is, when I start feeling that imbalance of maybe I'm involved too much, or I feel like I'm carrying the torch disproportionately, or inversely, if I feel like I'm disengaged in the meeting, you know, if I get my phone out and I'm, you know, someone's talking, as soon as I see myself disengage or I see them disengage, it starts that little flag of, are we all on the same page here? Because if we're not, that's fine, but I want to know right now, you know?
Yeah, I'm reading or I'm listening to the Audible of Ray Dalio's book, Principles,
Right.
of Life and Work. And this guy, for those of you who don't know him, Bridgewater Associates, it's I think they have $160 billion under assets. And I've only listened to the first 2.5 hours. And what the resonant theme throughout is the consciousness of, I want to be around people that uplift me, that stimulate me, that bring forward my creativity and my inquisitiveness and the exploration of it. And I look at, for those of you that what Andy's talking about is this platform that we're creating from the ground up, and it started as an idea that through, I think we're in our 7th pivot right now, is becoming this potentially entirely new financial model. I mean, that could touch a global perspective. Well, you know, in those moments where I kind of get sheepish and I go, well, I'm just a kid from West Hampton Beach. You know, what do I know? But what I do know is that I can claim my strengths in that, and in that being present moment, say, I know what I bring to the party. And what I love about what Dalio keeps talking about and coming back to is, have the wit and the wisdom to know what I don't know, you know, and don't think I got to ego play this thing out and bullshit people to say I've got this covered. Yep. I don't know what I don't know what I'm doing here. I mean, what I love about the 5 of us in that dynamic of what we're creating is, everyone not only knows their lane, not because it's been assigned them, because they've selected into that lane, because that is their level of expertise, that is their level of caring demonstrated at its highest form and fashion. And everyone complements each other so exquisitely. And it's like 5 guys playing basketball. You know,
they've been playing for a long time.
They've been playing for a long time, even though they're new to the team together, right? Yeah. Everyone, but I mean, if you look at the dynamic of who we've got, I mean, I don't know how old Mullins is, but he's in his 60s. You're 29?
Yeah.
Okay, so Matt is 31. Is Momber 31?
He's on the call. I don't think I'm allowed to tell.
I'm about to be 59, and Lance is certainly my age, and we all come at this thing from different levels. But the point of this and the analogy of it that anybody listening in can apply to is who's on your team right now.
Yeah,
You know,
that's the big hitter. It's always the big hitter, but it's so important now, right? Because it's like, and not to interject, but I mean, one of the things that's so present for me with our group that you're talking about is, if it was me 2 years ago picking a team, I pick individual people on the team, but I
right,
don't build a team out of this team. Like
right.
I don't have that vision and that foresight to do that. And I think that what you bring to that table amongst the many host of talents, one of them that I think is the most profound is building a team out of components that people don't see working together, and seeing how that can work, and not only seeing that and bringing them together, but then building an environment in which they're encouraged and there's structure put in place that promotes growth and unison and harmony within the organizational structure. And I think that's like, it's just so overlooked. And for me personally, you know, I've built a new business recently, and you've facilitated and helped that so much. And one of the things that we think about every day is how do you build that fertile ground with those people that promote such success and such harmony. And I mean, like, you weren't kidding. We're on our 7th pivot, and we have, you know, 5-6 people engaged in a project that all have very high sophisticated levels of other businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're at the table every day with people. You know, we have a development team from overseas, and this morning we were on a 3-hour straight call with a development team going over UI UX patterns with wireframes and dealing with SEC problems and how we're going to create, you know, legal structures that work. And we're a year and a half in with around a round table that's truly round. I mean, it's a different kind of ball game.
Yeah, and I realized from past experience that everyone needs to be able to have a voice. And
right.
I'm keep going back to Ray Dalio because it's so present. And the invitation around the room is, it's not brutal, but might as well be, transparency and honesty,
right.
and challenge
right.
everything. And, you know, no one needs to finish each other's sentences. It's about finish your thought. Let's give the space, allow the space for the best idea to come forward, and to everyone to feel safe to create that great idea, and to nurture someone else's idea and build upon it. And each one of those pivots has only made us stronger. Not one of those pivots says that was a bad idea. It was like, yeah, this leads us to this, but now we have a new exploration of information in this field. The kernel is here, and then take us there, and then build and take us there. So I think anybody listening in, we have a great opportunity to really assess what is working, what isn't working, have the courage to really look at, man, I keep banging my head against a wall in this thing, and to look at, well, why are you doing that? You know, you're doing that because you haven't considered another alternative, or you didn't even realize you're banging your head. But either way, there's an opportunity to slow it down and come present. And that's why, for me, coming back to being present, I get, the better I get at this, I know the faster I'm saying, oh, I'm off course here.
Right.
And it's subtle little beats, you know, the communications that you're having with your family or your colleagues or your clients, you know, when you're being inauthentic now, because that muscle is being honed and stimulated.
Absolutely.
And, you know, but it creates for such a more authentic relationship. And you know, it's not the destination, it's the journey. I mean, there's so many coined phrases, but they're all true. You know, they have relevance in that regard.
I mean, you touched on it too just now, but it goes a step deeper when, you know, I think about, we spoke about this earlier on, but how you measure success, right? Mm-hmm. And I think so often there's this conversation that's split between achievement and fulfillment, right? And there's these two camps that I think we get wrapped into, and one much more predominantly, which is success or achievement. And I think that when you go back to this, for me, when I stay present with being deliberately sincere and being as you just mentioned from Ray Dalio, you know, brutally authentic, right? Like, this is my thought. It doesn't mean you're cruel. It just means there's not a filter over my truth, right? This is what I think. I think that I see the value go up so high in the things that you create and the things that we create, specifically myself. When I'm the most sincere and when I'm the most authentic, the output is so much better. It's so much more wholesome. It's so much more fully thought. And, even looking back a year, 2 years, 3 years at deliverables that I've created for myself and for clients, I can look now at the whole portfolio and say, I wasn't that into that one. And it was a time when I was doing a project for somebody and we needed money. We're starting a business, and it's like, let's take that project on because it's an interesting project. It's up our wheelhouse. But when I look at the whole board now, you can spot them. And when I get that self-reflection moment of doing that, it increases that desire and that little muscle you talk about of sincerity even more, because, well, now I'm not doing right by that individual. And I didn't even know I wasn't doing right by them until I could step back and look at it.
Yeah, it becomes the honoring of self and the honoring everybody involved,
Right. Right.
and I found when I was in, I'll call it more of a lack consciousness as I started out in this business, I'd take anything from anybody, because I had specific needs that I thought were going to be met by that course of action.
Right.
And I've been told many times we learn either by the information or the experience. And those of us that have the wit to gain enough information from someone else's experience so they
Right.
don't have to repeat that experience stand a more graceful chance of working through it that much faster. But many times, as I've said, how do you learn when something is hot? There's only so much theory until you touch it and you pull your hand back and go, wow, I know what that one is, So I keep coming back to how the whole design of what I'm doing, what you're doing with me here in real time, Andy, is to try and give people a clear direction so they can authentically move forward in their path. Here is information. What you do with it is entirely up to you. I became so much more at peace in my life when I realized and accepted that people are going to do what they do. I have no control over ultimately what you do, but then that affords me the ability to do what I choose to do and embrace that inside of me. So where am I going with all of this? I would encourage everybody to look at their immediate surroundings, business, personal, everything, where they live, the physical plant space of where they are, what's their office environment, and say, is that in alignment with the key learning that you're exploring here today now? Because the more you apply that awareness to each and every environment, each and every interaction, well, there's a dynamic invitation for you to really separate those things that are offline with those that are online and invite more of the online and let go of more of the offline. Candidly, you may be left with very little. If we really get down to it, what is the courage that we have to take and embrace this learning from this reality of what we're talking about, of the preciousness of life, because now we've all been faced with a pandemic that says, hey, you could be gone. You simply touch a handle and you touch your mouth and that thing hits you and your immune system isn't in play. You got a problem. And so the stakes are exquisitely high because it gives us the ability to really embrace what's really important to us. And I think that's what we're going to come away from this in so many different respects. So that's just my encouragement. That's my invitation.
Nick, I if I can, I'd like to double down on that. And, I've challenged you on this a few times. The stakes are without question high. They're without question high right now. And the awareness of how high they are, I think is what we're looking at. I have, and this is a personal sentiment, but I have tried to operate not with, and there's a fine line between the urgency of how short of a time we all have here, but also being aware and trying to stay really present with, this isn't a long trip that we have here, with or without COVID, and I don't mean that in a morbid way, but I mean that in a sense of,
it's a fact.
I really cherish this moment and this time, and I cherish tomorrow's moment and tomorrow's time, and I cherish, Saturdays. And it's like, I don't view this as a long ride. I view this as a short ride, and I want the most bang for my buck out of this thing. And I think that when I have been able to apply that filter with what I was speaking about previously, when you're surrounded by people that, like you say, are gassing you up, people that are really there to, spark your curiosity and fuel your integrity and fuel your happiness, and are really there to help promote the best of you, not for any other self-serving reason, but just because it's the best for you. You end up living, at least my outputs have become much more holistic, right? And they start leading to these places that you don't end up, oops, I didn't mean to end up here. How am I living in this space with these people in this town that I don't like or I don't want to live in?
Yeah.
Because I think that's when, at least in my own life, I had gotten so far off track when I was younger, chasing a thing that I still thought was right, but I hadn't passed it through any filter. It's like that.
But did you know that, did you have the awareness to even pass it through those filters?
No,
right.
No, God, not at all. It was just like, I need to make more money. So that way, you know?
Right.
And then you make more money and you get to that end point. And it's like, oh man, I need a filter because that wasn't it.
Or I'm not enjoying the experience of how I made this money.
Yeah.
Right.
And, I think so often about, the awareness that this is an incredibly sensitive time. But I think that it's always an incredibly sensitive time. We always the things we don't want to look at always live back here somewhere, and this is just changed. It's brought it from behind us to right up front. And it's like, you have to look at it now. You have to look at how sensitive this life and this time is.
Well, you have fewer distractions to avoid looking at it. And I think we ultimately, we don't have to look at anything we don't want to. And unless we're inspired, driven, connected enough to really look at something because we genuinely care about it, we probably won't. But those things that have intrinsic value to us, and I've learned more and more that it is the quality of my life, not the quantity of it. And my life were over tomorrow, would I look back and go, baby, you lived big. And I get goosebumps thinking about it. And I look at my life that way. If I were gone tomorrow, how would I live today? And it's not about what I'm going to eat. It's going to be, what is the expression that I'm going to do? Or what am I going to write down? When I'm going to dive into a tape recorder and say, Lily, Harry, this is what I think of it. I love you. And that creates an urgency when we have that finality in front of us. And without that finality, we define our urgency. And I'm suggesting, let's get connected to what we really want to take away from this time and urgently live that, in each moment, and make that more important than anything.
So Nick, one of the things that I would ask you is, and this is a thing that I have been asking myself a lot, because I'm as guilty as any, right? I have these awarenesses, I have these epiphanies, I have these moments of clarity and synchronicity that give me the roadmap. But boy, does life get busy fast. I sent an email to my family yesterday and today, one to just my immediate family and one to my extended family today. But boy, I years happen and I've lost track of people, and it seems like it was 4 minutes. And I really, the thing I'm working on, and I want to hear your thoughts on, is the action steps that lead to implementation long term, right? Because it's not like any of our lives aren't getting more complex 4 months from now, 8 months from now, 4 years from now, and tomorrow. There's always the next thing, and we're so good at that, that attention span. There's always something. And I think that action steps are what I would love to hear about next, and what you think about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And my first response, I was just talking to Laura about it last night. We do our debrief every night. We call it appreciations, where I've shared this in the past, where we both share 3 things that we appreciate ourselves and 3 things that we appreciate about our partner. And it's a wonderful way to drift off to sleep. My first action step, as I'm coming present with it all, is how many plates do I have in the air, and how many are truly important to me, in alignment with, that are going to keep me and support me staying more present, and how many do I sacrifice, let go. And sacrifice is not a bad word to me. Sacrifice comes from the root word of sacred. What do I make sacred? And things that are not sacred, let those be sacrificed, and not from a bad place, just letting them go. So I'm prioritizing my life right now. And my prioritization started at the end of last year when I stepped away from the role of what I was doing because it was taking so much time. And I only want to give 100% of what I'm doing when I'm doing it, especially when I'm being paid for it on that metric. And I realized I have such a wonderful agenda that I want to move forward. I needed to step away from that. And that took courage to say, I'm letting that go. But there's no way I'd be living the life that I'm living right now if I were still in that role. So it's prioritization of where do I want to invest my time, first and foremost. And then I will show you my, I'm a mind mapper. That's how I roll, baby. And I just put being present in the center of it. And then I shoot off, why is that important to me? And I start fleshing that out. And each one of these has huge drill downs. And then I go, what is the opportunity that I want to realize? What is the success that I want to create? And how does this support that? And what am I going to let go of because it no longer serves? And so that's the next action step for me, is to get it out of my head and take the time to really consider what are the dynamics of, in this case, being present. And how is it going to serve me here, there, and everywhere? And what am I going to free myself up to realize when I play to this and let go of those things that do not serve me? That's the overview architecture for me. And then it's, okay, how do I apply it into actions? And things always come down to a schedule for me, because that's how I can account for a day. And I look at it as a schedule as incredible freedom. David Allen, Getting Things Done, shared that with me, and Insight Seminar shared that with me. The wisdom of, if I know where everything's laid out, I don't need to worry about getting to it down the line, because I know it's on my schedule down the line and I'll get to it. So then that brings me much more present with what's in front of me right now. And so that's my action step process.
Yeah, on the scheduling note, I loved the conversation we had with Joey Hubbard about the work that Thrive Global is doing on scheduling your stress time.
Right.
And we had that conversation. And before I dive into that, one of the things I wanted to say is, from a person that writes things down, and takes my notes, one of my action steps is I have these for every project I do, right? Yep. So every project gets a different one. And they're all at various states, and I have some that are personal, and I've been keeping these for years. I always had this stigma against reading them. It was this bizarre, like hesitation for professional notes. You go back and you reference them and you do all this stuff, but the personal stuff, I always treated it as more of I wanted to get it out of my head. And as soon as I did, there wasn't the next action step, right? I never went back in and opened it back up and said, oh, wow, I look at all these things I thought about, And it sounds so silly, but I think so often about the follow-up, the follow-up, the commitment to the action step. And, at least for me, and if it's helpful to anyone, I am particularly bad at step 3 and 4. I do step 1 really well from that self-reflection point. I write it down. I have a thought about myself or a thing I want to do. And I really do a good job of getting it out. But what I don't do a good job of is going back to it after I get it out and keeping that very present. So, one of the action steps for me is, and I think what we're kind of, it's a fine line between the difference, but scheduling and journaling, right? Getting the ideas out and then creating structure around them. I think that my big action step is I do schedule everything now, right? Personal time, stress time, work time, different meetings. And I've started scheduling out exercise and creative expression, right? I have in my calendar now when I'm going to paint. I have in my calendar now when I'm going to work out and do yoga. And then the next step that I've just started to implement is reflection time that's like deliberate. This isn't fluff time. It's not fluff reflection time. It's time to actually go back through my notes and then my sentiments and the calendar and look at it. How did the day go? Did I keep these things present? And really don't run away with days. Don't let days run into weeks and into months and then reflect back on how's the last 6 months gone? Because I think I missed so much there and I want to get better at that. How did yesterday go? How did today go?
Well, and is there an intentionality that you look at when you go back to that journal? Is it to get a pearl of wisdom? Is to reinforce an awareness that you got in that moment? What is your intention to go back to the journaling?
The intention is to keep it more present, more at the top of the pile, You know,
Okay.
I have the benefit of having a brain and a memory that it's all there. You know, as soon as I read it, it's right back to the top, the whole conversation in my head, how it came about. You know, I'm fortunate in being able to keep it in that regard. But I lose track of it if I don't just go back to it. Just go back and read that one sentence. Hey, you know, dedication to sincerity, you know, and then that next morning, find it's easier to practice because I've reminded myself. You know, just doing it the once isn't good enough. So just the intention is just to keep it more present, keep it on the top of the stack. Literally, you know, we have stacks of thoughts.
Right. Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'd love to hear from anybody that wants to share what is their key learning and one thing that you're going to do to implement that. The chat is open. I love my brother Harry Siegel's comment that we want to stretch ourselves as we choose quality. That
Yeah.
I agree. And you know, how do you stretch yourself? You know, where do you stretch yourself, and what qualifies as a stretch moment in relationship to that why? You know, so just be very curious to hear what's going on in your worlds as we pause. You know what I'm finding in these things, that pauses are okay. in communications, in you know when the hot lights are on and the mic's in our face and the camera's there, it's still okay to pause, to reflect, to gather one's thoughts, or let there be a gestation period of time. Let's see, we got something from Ray Dahlia. All right, Ray's in the house, figuratively. Learning must come before deciding. But no matter how you acquire your knowledge or where you store it, what's most important is that what you know paints a true and rich picture of the realities that will affect the decision. Boy, in listening to his story, the ability to assess the situation. He talked briefly about this idea that McDonald's wanted to create the chicken McNugget, but there are variable costs. And, you know, so there are two components that make the machine up of a chicken McNugget. It's the chicken and it's the feed. And what's the variable there and what's the fixed cost? And he just broke it down so eloquently. And I started to think about, from a real estate deal or from whatever projects that I'm working on, analyzing the machine of what we want to engage in and seeing what are its component parts, where is the opportunity, and explore that idea. I see Judith Butler has chimed in. Andy, you had a chance to read that one and give thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. You know, you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I think that, you know, what she said, I think having multiple opportunities that come my way, being more intentionally with the choices that I make, I'm choosing something to, am I doing something, taking on a project because it's career worthy, or am I jumping into too many things at the same time, or something that I end up swimming in too many multiple obligations. I think that, you know, it's a product that I certainly do all the time. And that's where I talk about that filter. Nick has been instrumental in helping with this, and just through, you know, education and also, you know, just your action. But we just did it this morning with the platform we're doing. We built the end before we built the whole process in the middle, not because that's going to be the end goal, but just to give us kind of a beacon at the end of the road of, we vaguely understand we're trying to end up there. Now let's start from square one and go all the way through it. And I love that. You know, Andy Mullins, one of our business partners, he brought this awareness to us because I had voiced concerns in our meeting this morning that I felt like the process we were taking was had potential of harming the end design. And, you know, he kind of laughed and he goes, that was actually very intentional. I wanted to create a beacon for us at the end of the road, knowing that it would change, but it would guide the river in the same direction, as opposed to just shooting in the dark and really hoping we end up somewhere interesting. So what I would say, you know, it's funny to have, but I would just say, getting more clear about the picture at the end helps those decisions so much. Because if the more time that I spend on the picture at the end that I'm looking for, it becomes so obvious when I'm looking at decisions, because a lot of things interest me. A lot of things are curious, or, you know, they pique your interest, or you want to know more about it. I would love to work with these people, but does it get me there? Does it serve my higher intention? Does it get me to that thing I'm trying to go to? And you might not know, but it certainly
Yeah.
adds a lot of clarity for me.
Yeah, and it's also what is, you know, the idea to be discerning, what's in my lane and what isn't.
Yeah.
I think part of my evaluation of whether I would dive into something beyond what I'm already doing, if that's even possible, would be, well, what's my level of expertise with it right now? What's my learning curve? How much time will I have to invest in it to be even proficient at it? When I know inside of me, if I'm not an expert at it, I'm going to keep scratching and clawing until I get to that point, and that all takes time. You know, I mean, you put me in front of a room on a real estate deal. Yeah, there's not going to be a question that I'm not going to have a direction on, right? It's just the years of experience in doing it. So what we're doing now is in relationship to the real estate field. So I'm parlaying my expertise and then bringing in the geniuses around me so that I can feel comfortable that all I have to do is my part. I don't have to do anybody else's part or be responsible for their part, because I wouldn't even know where to start. And so, you know, if you've got plenty on your plate, Judith, and you don't need anything else to stimulate you, I'd say stay the course with what you got. Unless it's something that you want to abandon something else, depending on what time you got. You have a thought on that?
I think that your brother said something interesting there too, that relates to that. And it's like, you know, I think that there's almost two layers of the discernment. The first is, you know, is it in the right alley, right? Is it in that alley? And number two is, am I surrounded by that group that's talented and equally gassed up about doing it? Because it's the marriage of those two things that I think provides and produces outputs that we're like, we did it. We did the thing, right? You know, it's very rarely, if ever, have I been part of something completely by myself that I then ended up being like, look at this output that I did. You know,
Yeah.
it's that group mixed with that filter that's the secret sauce, I think.
And I would give one more component to the secret sauce. Are there shared moralities and principles and true values? You know, picking great talent for the sake of their talent is an art, and I think the final dynamic of that is picking those people that where you have the courage to express and demonstrate who you're going to be, and invite them to play at the same level. And if they're not, even though they're really talented, say, no, that's just not gonna finally work, because people's character will show up, right? Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Just one of my favorite quotes as a life learning lesson. You know, what do they really do? Well, let's give them another chance. Bam, you get smashed again before you finish the thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I think that and diversity. I think one of the things that we do really well is, you know, the room is filled with people of different talents. You know, I think it's so vastly important to identify that you need a really good mixed bag to make almost anything these days. You know, it's such a diverse world with so many interesting new developments every day and new platforms to put it on, and success, I think or creating a thing that really fulfills the intention of the build needs a really diverse set of skills, and I don't think any one person has all of them. You know, and Phil, you know, the project we're on, the entire room is filled with people with an entirely different skill set.
I don't want one person that has every skill set because they don't.
Right.
You don't want me to be, I mean, I have some great ideas about a design, but you don't want me designing, implementing that design. They used to call me Nick Cut and Paste, you know, before we had, you know, I was really good at blowing up images on on a copier and cutting them, and it looked like ransom notes, but neither here nor there. Anybody else in our remaining time have, I learned from the experts I hire. We must always learn. Harry, I couldn't agree with you more. That quest for, I love learning. I love when someone says, one of the dynamics I love about working with you, Andy, is there's such a level of trust. I never feel like, is he trying to con me? We have different dynamic, there are different perspectives here. Even when, you know, we have our own way. You know, I have a tone, Andy has a tone. Judith, your son has a tone once in a while when he wants to. And it normally comes from patients like, yeah, you're not hearing me, or I don't want to hear what you have to say, and because I got to get this out, or that. It's still from the right place, but oftentimes because we're tired. You know, it's like, I've just punched out right now. I want to try and get this message across, but having those people in the trenches with you, you know, Scott Carmody and I have considered each other foxholders for years. And what I mean by that is that if you had to be in a foxhole, who do you want there with you? You know, and I have people in my life. My wife is a foxholer. You're a foxholer. The people that I really spend a lot of time with, the people that I re-engage with consistently, I consider them all foxholers. You know, the people that I've worked with at Partners Trust, and we're just in it, you know, and now the new relationships through Compass. It's those that I really stay engaged with and stay engaged with me. Those are the people where I want to spend my time, you know?
Yeah. I love that. I would say in closing, because Nick won't say it. Also, you got to say Scott.
Scott has a way of you know, if I
subtly telling the truth.
Oh no, he's not subtle. Yeah, I was good at cut and paste. Because no one has the proof. It's totally interpretive. But anyway.
Yeah, I was just gonna say as we come to a close here, because I know that Nick isn't gonna do it. You guys ought to go to Nick's YouTube channel and check him out. His coffee and courage stuff on his gram is pretty interesting. But all this stuff, the wheel, and you know, all these teachings. I think, Nick, one of the things I've loved so much about what you've been doing over the last year is you've transitioned from this executive role into an executive role of yourself. Is you really dove in off the deep end and started producing things that the world around you are producing, and they've been doing for years, and you haven't been. And you just got in the deep end. And I think that's a quality and an action step and an awareness that I greatly respect and do my best to participate in every day. And that's sometimes we know, and you know, one of the things you said earlier is, you know your lane. You're presently living just enough in your lane to stay in your lane, but 95% everything else is like, you just jumped in the deep end. These are things you haven't been doing. So, you know, if you guys want to hear more about what Nick's been doing, he's putting it out there for everybody to hear, and he's doing it in a pretty interesting way. So my hat's off to you there. And I'm excited to continue to engage and keep doing this stuff.
Well, I so appreciate that. And you are right there with me as all of the people that have touched my life along the way. It's about the shared experience and giving of our gifts. And that's what motivates me. And you know, the encouragement for each and every one of you is just claim your gift, claim that and demonstrate it. And the encouragement and the design of this episode is to really invite you to be more aware of what is that learning, because that learning that you have at this time is what your gift becomes the carrier wave that you express that learning on. And for your own benefit, selfishly live a beautiful, exquisite, harmonious, abundant life. And then the overflow of that, everyone gets to be a participant in that and reap the rewards. So, Andy, it is just always a pleasure being with you, spending time, and Matt and the whole team, and to my friends, to my family, to Andy's friends and families, and those of you that tune in. Have a beautiful day, and let's win.
Thanks so much, Nick.
You got it. Thank you.